Kenny Smyers, I tell you what, we got our girl from the Valley, Therese Sullivan, one of our favorites. If you're not checking her out, you're missing out. She does the blog buildingcontext.me, and she is in the know, looking from the outside in. So, Kenny, what more can you tell us about Therese, or should we just hop on in?
Well, I'll just give you a quick preview of my thoughts on it. Is that Therese has an extensive background in multiple fields. So when she comes onto the show, she brings information and intelligence and experience from multiple points of our industry. So it's always a great experience. Plus, she keeps us updated on Silicon Valley. Welcome to the show, Therese.
Welcome, Therese.
Thank you. Thanks for having me this morning. It's
all,
always fun. Yeah, always fun to talk.
Always a pleasure with us too. So listen, I think you covered your first Control Trends Award. So
yeah, last time I saw you two, you were in tuxedos, and you were really running the show. That was a great night. I think you really found your groove. Year 5, right? Year 5.
Year 5, yeah.
And I mean, you had the groove before, but that one was quite. I just think it was a great night. It had lots of energy. I think the energy of adding the Bachnet Awards inside was fun, to have both those groups. And I got to run around and talk to people while you guys were orchestrating everything. And that.
Well, we had some help. We had Rob Allen and Michael Bunner and Stacy McCammon also gave us that extra, all those tentacles to make that show go as seamless as it did. Thank you very much for saying that, because any compliments we get about that always makes us smile.
Well, yeah.
Kimberly Brown, right?
Yeah.
Oh, the MCs, yeah. Well, yeah.
She does a great job up there with you too. I think that. You need to sing her praises, because
she's a natural.
Sure
She's
is.
just a natural, yeah.
She and Mark Peacock together make a great story. And Therese, we want to thank you also. You wrote a really, really nice article, sort of your experience at the Control Trends Award. So we really appreciate that. As usual, you kind of have a way of capturing things with words that in writing that most people can't. I think that's part of your gift, and then also your perspective. So, but it was big time, Kenny. I thought we hit on it. We finally got the women acknowledged in the industry, and you were one of the finalists for the Woman of the Year. So what was that piece like?
Well, that was a super experience. It was funny. It was, of course, funny. I know that some of the women have come back to you and said we need a Men of the Year award next year.
Nobody said that to me. I'm afraid they think Kenny and I'll just take that one on.
We need a Man of the Award a year, but that's what we were laughing amongst ourselves when we were up on that podium, and everybody was clapping. We were kind of like, "Is this really? Why isn't there a Man of the Year?" But it was great, and the women up there were amazing, and it's fun how much I've gotten to for different reasons, know various of the women up there on the stage with me. Jenny and Renee Joseph from
Johnson
JCI.
Controls, yeah.
We've been talking about stuff. There's JCI has got a lot of things going on, also some Silicon Valley things going on. So it was fun to meet them face to face. And I think one of the really cool things that happened is I learned about the breakfast that was happening the next day. So what you saw at Control Trends, like to wake up the next morning, was 7 a.m. in the Caesar Hotel, a ballroom full of women. And there were so many ballrooms. I mean, HR is so vast that it fills all these hotels in Las Vegas. And you get into the Caesar and it's a maze and you're lost, but you find one ballroom, open the door, and it's overflow capacity of women talking about the women of AHR. And Renee Joseph and Jenny
Stentz. Yep.
Yeah, they were part of the organization of that. And there was there's a lot to talk about. I don't know, we keep bringing in the Silicon Valley thing, but this week the news about Uber hit, where
the sexual harassment thing, right?
Yeah, they lose their women engineers.
Oh, wow. And
she was going through percentages, this is why I left Uber. And when I was there was 14% women. Now there's like 6% women. we're just still evolving in that area, and certainly in the classically male-oriented field of building, construction, design, operations, and that breakfast the next morning was really eye-opening for me, and I lots of admiration for Jenny and Renee.
Say more about that out of the breakfast, Therese. Give us some of the key takeaways. What surprised you about that, or what was some of the takeaways you had that you didn't expect from that breakfast meeting?
Well, there was there was a professor that led it. I don't know whether she was from Carnegie Mellon, but one of the big engineering schools. It was very oriented towards young women starting out their career because we want diversity in this industry. We want all the people.
Yes.
And so it was a professor that was leading it, and it was, I think, distillation of a class about how to recognize that sometimes there's going to be problems in the workplace, what the best thing to do in those problems. And then there was a lot of story sharing about this happened, that happened. Women holding other women back too.
Yeah.
That was discussed. It was
Sure.
kind of like the whole Uber thing this week in Silicon Valley. There were a little bit of tears, a little bit of, I wish I had not dropped out. A lot of people wish that they had stuck with it and handled situations better instead of saying, well, I'm going to leave and curtail my career at that company for.
Well, I tell you, Therese, it's, and there was a book I read or heard about talking about, how vicious the workplace just is. I mean, you think about the things that a lot of people do in the workplace is condoned, and it's just it's sort of nuts. And then on top of that, you compound the fact that you got the sexes, right? The male and the female. It just gets really complicated. So, but I think Ken and I have very, very selfish reasons for. This is we, along with Ken St. Clair, and I think you have noticed that there's a shortage of qualified people in our industry, and with the demand that's coming about in our industry, we have to fill those shoes. So we're trying to attract young guns in, and of course, the women are absolutely one of the best resources we've got. And you got to know them. That stage right there. You talk to any of those women, and they're dynamic. They're incredible. Jenny Stentz, for crying out loud, is one of the top executives on the planet in any field, and yet she's so accessible, and she sort of brings that a whole nother dynamic to things.
Yeah, deservedly so. So anyway, that was great. It was like the CTA Awards was like a segue into what I saw the next morning, and then I keep experiencing. Now I'm met CABA folks there, and they asked me, bringing in the Silicon Valley again, the CABA is having their forum in Santa Clara, actually the Intel campus. It sounds like the same place IBCon was held.
Yeah.
There's so much challenge going on in the women thing that, because you're changing cultures and behavior, and you got the corporate culture and then you have social culture. I have 2 daughters, and I could tell you back when Title IX just came on board, how it was met with such contempt, and, because it affected the football programs, building, the team building for the baseball programs, and when you think about how much the contribution of a family to a school district and the monies that are portioned, the girls certainly deserve their share of that budget. So I remember going into discussions, let's say, and it was such a challenge, but I was a father of 2 daughters going up against a father of 2 boys, and so I've seen it changed a lot. America's an amazing place, but I don't think anywhere in the world you're going to see a faster transition and acceptance and parity. So I didn't get a chance to say that. But going back to the CABA thing, CABA is, I don't think people realize how extraordinarily big and important CABA is, and how much of a reach they have and how much good work they do. So tell us about the event in Silicon Valley.
So they do digital home as well as commercial building. They have 2 tracks at the CABA event, and they bring together, I'm still on the outskirts of this. The panel I'm moderating actually is going to be one of our friends, Mark Pitak, and somebody, but it's going to be 2 other speakers. I can't remember their names. And it's going to be both about data analytics and cybersecurity.
Sure.
So
We got
that's good.
Aglia Kong is a CTO for corporate networking, and Neil Tunmore, corporate vice president of corporate services, and Matt Mayer, vice president of consumer experiences, are the keynote
Yeah,
speakers. Yep.
yeah. So it's it's a big topic around here, and I think that in conjunction with the forum, they're having um, a pitch fest. They're inviting. They've been. I know Alper. Actually, I helped Alper do a submission for the pitch fest, but there any startup company that wants to present before the forum actually gets started. So I think it's the day before is the pitch fest.
That's pretty
That
exciting.
a panel of judges. All the startups have products in the building space, and it's getting that energy going between the existing dominant big brand companies and all these startups that have ideas. Where's the innovation going to come from? And the innovation comes from startups. So CABA is one of those linking organizations that is facilitating that
Awesome.
sort of meetup. So I think,
Yeah.
I think it's great. And I think the location in Silicon Valley, it's great to have it here. And of course, Intel is a big investor. I don't know if you guys read I think they say I always say Memori, but it's Memory. Jim McHale, his research firm, Jim's been writing some pieces about startups and how each of these big corporations are really their venture investment arms are getting more active and realizing that they've got to invest in these startups if they want to jumpstart their own innovation. So they want to meet them and understand them, and it's just what's happening right now.
Well, Chase, again, I feel like I'm going to put you in a reverse gear each time because at Startup Fest, I thought, when you were saying offline earlier about how it's incredible how this is the new way. So I don't want to say it's disruptive, but I mean, I remember like crowdsourcing. The first time I heard that, I thought that's an amazing way to solve a problem, or an amazing way for a corporation to get outside of its own limitations and its own barriers, because they only see it from a different perspective. And there's a genius out there somewhere that sees their problem and offers something from the outside perspective that really was it releases all that pent up opportunity because it came from a different unaffected source. Like instead of everything being internal, you get that external. So some very great thoughts on that. But the
right,
thing,
and I think, I don't know, we're always talking about the books we're reading, and this one I haven't read yet, but the one about just generally the big corporations have cut their R&D departments. I think in the race and the quarter by quarter pressure to put shareholder results or shareholder value, these big corporations don't do the kind of internal R&D that they used to do.
Right. Well, you're right, and plus now I think it's just by the time they do that, and there's turn cycles 2 years. From even when they say, okay, we want to build this starting tomorrow, by the time they get the first one out the door and on the shelves, it's 2 years. So, and then it's too late because the innovations going on with technology. It's like the whole concept of Silicon Valley. Fail often, fail first, and fail forward. But it's an iteration type of progress, not a substantial where a product's going to change and be a dominant product by itself.
Again, it's Jim McHale who brought up Christensen, the author about Innovator's Dilemma, why the big corporations have trouble succeeding at innovation. And one of them is nobody wants to eat. They're eating their own lunch. Somebody else eats you. You're expecting somebody else to come in, and when they get these new ideas get squelched internally because you're stepping on somebody's toes internally.
Right.
That's that book, Innovator's Dilemma, and they're growing beyond that. I think here another Valley event is in the last 2 years since the Johnson-Tyco merger. Tyco had what they called the Tyco Innovation Garage. Now they've got the JCI Tyco. I don't know what they're going to call it yet, but it's still the Innovation Garage here, which is sort of full-time running pitch fests and looking for startups, beating the bushes for things that are going to work. And of course, Tyco expands it out to security, fire, and physical security, fire prevention, and all the kind of Internet of Things that Tyco is involved in. And I think Jenny is big in that area of trying to make the merger work. And I think where the rubber meets the road is in this Internet of Things startup area.
Agreed.
So,
well, you have an article coming up, I believe, for the March edition of Automated Buildings. What's that? What's the theme there?
Yeah, I've got an interview with Alper. I've done a couple things for March. February, before we pass into March, February, my article it sort of surprises me when I put these things out, but it was a top read for February by a wide margin, and I kind of keyed off Seinfeld and the idea of that funny labeling episode, and just the topic of labeling and the topic of how that relates to machine learning. That was I think it was really well accepted because it presented that topic pretty simply, but it is really, when you're talking about moving from where we are now into the era of machine learning, everything's got to get metadata tagged. And I think we understand it, but I don't think we understand yet how important it is.
That was very good. Yeah, in fact, if you say the first, one of the most rewatched episodes of the comedy series Seinfeld, the Label Maker, when Elaine's gift to a friend at Christmas was re-gifted to Jerry before the Super Bowl. So, but yeah, that's a great comment. Therese, that's why I think Eric and I really believe that you have that incredible insight from them. Tell people about your background real quick. Real quick, give us the 411. Where'd you get all this profound knowledge?
Well, one thing in my background, because it really is state of the art now, is I came from a company I did up in Oregon called Mentor Graphics, which Siemens just bought. And what Mentor Graphics does, and this is like in the 80s, 90s, I worked actually in Paris for Mentor Graphics. And what they do, the category is called electronic design automation, but it's systems on a chip design. They do the software for, and especially this was so important in the 80s, for designing the circuit boards and basically manipulating polygons on a screen, because wires had become, you used to be able to breadboard things and put, when you wanted to do a circuit board, literally a breadboard, and put wires and chips, and that became impossible with micro things getting smaller in the 80s. So you had to do it all on screen with geometric polygons to say where the electrons are going to travel. So they basically, that's what electronic design automation is. One half the computer-aided design, the other half simulation. Well, all that technology is becoming so important to our industry now, whereas in the 80s and 90s, I was talking about how to simulate what was going on in a computer tower. Today, that same thinking is going on, how to simulate what's going on inside an office tower. But the software is the same, and I really see the same patterns. All Alper stuff, visualization, which that was great. Those awards that went out, CTAs for Alper and the Digilogic folks about visualization. Well, things have gotten, just like in microelectronics, things got too complicated to think about on a breadboard. Now things have gotten in buildings also too complicated to think about in our own heads, and we need visualizations. We need to be able to simulate and predict what's going on, and we need software tools for that.
Hey, Therese.
So that's why I get a lot of insight, is because I've been through one round of this.
Well, hey, Therese, Eric here again. So I'm wondering, with all this stuff, all these great tools we're getting, and this is more of a philosophical question, and we're going to wax philosophical here for a minute. But, are my kids' even going to be able to write? Now we're going to, voice commands. Ken Sinclair talked about, the using of voice commands. We got the visualization, we got the data, and then, we're going to connect those things together where the thinking is done for us. What is that going to do to us as a species as we evolve? I know this is getting a little bit off topic, but with your wide background, I'd love to hear what you have to say about that.
I guess I think we need to keep. Maybe it's where I am right now. I'm actually right now. We just got a new puppy, and I consider the puppy, and it's a husky, my new teacher. The puppy is my new teacher. Is get back into your own senses. Watch his ears perk up. Watch when he just shakes things off. He meets another dog on the street. He has a little, and then he just shakes it off. His instincts, his physicalness. I'm just like, oh, let's not forget how to do that, because our brain is just some meat between our ears.
With a little electricity there.
We don't want to forget the rest of our senses. So,
well, yeah, but it is kind of, and again, to me, it's a germane topic because, as Paul Oswald talks about a lot, the tribal knowledge is leaving the building and it's being replaced with, like you say, these great technological advances. But there was a woman I listened to on a podcast with Tim Ferriss. I don't know if you ever check him out or not, but brilliant woman. I was trying to find her name. I can't remember, but she was talking about sort of this same question to a degree that, she's in her 50s, I think she said. And she said she remembered for the first time when she grew up, her mom began to cook meals from a box and a can, which was sort of unheard of. But, and the fallout for that is, arguably most of us are kind of more unhealthy than we've ever been, right? It's just sort of, you could be argued that it's sort of destroyed agriculture and all these other sort of things. So I guess the question I'm sort of posing is, how do we strike a balance, or can we strike a balance, or is this just an inevitability? We're going to go down this path, and like I say, 100 years from now, if our kids can't read or write or think, it's okay because the machines are going to be there, and hopefully we'll still have puppies, or unless they're little puppy robots, right?
Little puppy robots to be our teachers.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. We've only got the next generation. I think we're all involved in the next generation. I'm back to the woman thing that I have a daughter, and she's super interested in fact, she's studying in a track for facilities, the next generation facilities management, energy management. And I think she's going to have a wonderful life. It has to happen that we get people and that understand this, but there's a physicalness and an artness of it too. And I was another thing I really want to thank you for is capturing that session.
Great session. Yeah.
It was a really great session for you to be in. And I felt like there was a strong connection between the CTA awards and that session, that people up there were really relaxed. The funny back and forth between John Petsy and
Andy McMillan.
McMillan was it reminded me of seeing Andy up on the stage at the CTAs. He was just like really relaxed and in a comfortable place and just like, let's really talk about this. And we did get into this subject that you're bringing up now, Eric, of the human factors. And I did bring up my daughter again.
You did.
About because there has to be that human factor. We all have to take the dogs as our teachers and be feeling and physical to understand how to use all that technology, all these LED lights. It's not just technology; it's technology interfacing with people.
And on top of that, I like Paul Oswald's comment. He interjected that, is that really a facility manager or building automation responsibility to change human behavior and everything? Because remember, we got into ethics, but he said we can barely keep the buildings running, and now we're going to try to, go into a metric where we're at measuring comfort and how well people are productive inside of a space. But that was a heck of a council, or whatever you'd call a board there of minds from different directions. But great interjections. And what about the ethics, Therese? What's the thin line between will you volunteer your information and your data and when it's taken from you and then you're the product? I mean, as we get this innovation, where's the governors of our morals and our privacies? How do you interlace all those considerations in with all this great innovation and everything we've talked about previously?
The day after I sent around, and I don't know if I included you guys on, I'll find it, but there's actually a ethics in buildings consortium organization that's been launched in Europe to just focus on that ethical question that was brought up. I think again, right now we've got the technology. The technology has run ahead of our ability to think through those problems, and I don't think that that the technician installing the lights or designing the control system, it's not in this scope right now.
Well, Therese, I think that's where I think you are so important to our industry, because you have a context that's outside of the industry. I think, we as an industry tend to be hyper-focused, as we probably should be, on the next great technology, making the buildings more efficient, and I think, having people be more productive in buildings, I think, is ethically okay. When it has me buy stuff I don't need, I think that's where the ethics line gets drawn. So I for one, am looking for you to continue to sort of, bring that outside looking in context, put it in a bigger context, because everything in life has its, effects, both positive and negative. And no matter how good technology is and how much more efficient we get, there is a cost to that. So again, I think our industry is really, really lucky to have you in our industry, because again, like Kenny said, from your perspective from the outside. So I encourage you to keep asking those tough questions and keep those on our, on the front burners of our minds. And I think, Ken Sinclair is another one that does that. And I'm going to shift gears a little bit. Did we surprise him in inducting him to the Hall of Fame? Was that a surprise?
That was a big surprise. That was so much fun to see him surprised.
It doesn't happen often, does it?
No, and the piece he wrote, Kenny was trying to get me to go to March, and March is great. I love, because I do a great interview with Alper. I hope everybody reads that. I did in the background a piece with DLR Group, so that closing the loop between the specifying engineers and the control people. I think that's a good one. But Ken has let slip through, because he's got now. He works with Penton. He's always worked with engineering systems to get his pieces out a little bit early. And the piece he did for Contractor Magazine, I think it's his best writing yet about this people piece. And you know where he is right now? He's skiing.
Good for him.
It's like it's the weekend before. He's so chill. Like, it's the weekend before, because it's a short month, February. The issue is due out. He's got it all. He and Jane have it all in the bag, and he's with his granddaughter and daughter skiing. So,
well, we make no bones about
he's Canadian.
We make no bones about the fact, Therese, that Ken Sinclair is one of our favorite people. We consider him a mentor. Like you, we consider him the industry lucky to have him. So it couldn't be a more deserving guy to get in the Hall of Fame. And Kenny, I think I speak for you that's going to be one of our all-time highlights with Ken Sinclair getting surprised and inducted in the Hall of Fame with his good friend Jack McGowan. And that was what really worked out, because Ken has such an affinity for Jack McGowan, and it was so heartfelt. His induction.
He too. He's writing another book. Oh well, I'm going to step back a little bit, but I'm right. He's got another book he's working on, and he's just, you gotta look up to these guys, that they're thriving and contributing.
Yeah.
Best ever.
Yeah, boy, and we Ken Sinclair is an official Young Gun too, so he's got the trophy and everything. So proving that Young Gun is not an age, it's a mentality. So, wow, Therese. Well, so what else we got, Kenny?
Well, I think we covered a lot of it, and we just have to do this more often, because again, I think for the listener, if people hear this, they're going to hear just this isn't all just HVAC and dry nuts building automation. This is the world around us, and I think Therese, one of the first lessons or explanations that you really gave an in-depth understanding was context and what it means. Like when you did that snowball piece a couple of Christmases ago about what it meant. You go into a store and your smart device connects to the device inside the store that's monitoring activity and people, and then it just starts to steer you into an experience. So the user experience thing was the next thing that came out of context. In other words, we have technology, it's deployed, it's in every house now. The context is what it does to change your life. So if you have wireless in your house, now you can add your smart smart TV, your smart lights, your smart garage door opener, and that is contextualization. And I think that was a great explanation. So,
well, hang on, I want to hop in and add to that definition of contextualization, Therese, and see if you agree with this vis-a-vis our conversation. You, Kenny, and I are all old enough to remember a book called Megatrends by a guy named John Nesbitt back in the day, and where he predicted all these great technology sort of boons. And but one of the things he said is the more we got more high tech, the more you needed high touch, right? Which was sort of that human element that we're talking about. So I sort of bring that up because I think that has got to be part of the context of technology, which is, again, Ken Sinclair, is addressing it. And you're addressing it, and we're addressing it. And I think, to me, a great example of a company that maybe sort of gets the concept of high touch and high tech, and I want to get your opinion on this, would be Comfy. And Kenny, real quick, before Therese responds to that, give people the 411 on what Comfy is. And then Therese, I'd like to get your comments vis-a-vis if you think Comfy is one of those companies that's sort of bridging the high touch, high tech, because I think that might be the differentiator going forward as we get more and more down the road technology wise is how can you have great technology, but at the same time, a high touch sort of component to it.
Well, my experience was with Lindsay Baker. I was fortunate enough with the Realcomm IBCon to be a moderator on 2 panels, and I got to meet Lindsay Baker, and she explained what Comfy was all about, and about smart sensors and how human beings now, instead of trying to heat the space and heat the environment, make the person in that space comfortable and get a direct relationship. So they feel like, gone are the days of placebo thermostats and this detachment about, there's a system out there that I'm not related to and they don't care if I'm hot or cold. And that turns into a brutal person in a relationship. And it's not as productive. Well, Lindsay made that quite clear that if you give those people an opportunity to interface directly with their phone, I want heat or I want cooling or I'm comfy, then you've got the best zoning system in the world. You got happy, productive people, and you got the most efficient energy saving systems available.
Well, it's high touch, right? Just the name Comfy is a high touch sort of thing. So
absolutely. Yeah.
There's a setup, Therese. Take that ball and run with it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Comfy is, they have brought that piece. And I know that Lindsay came from Berkeley, where she did a lot of studies of occupancy, post-occupancy surveying of how people felt in their buildings, did a lot of K through 12 work to understand how children felt in their learning environments and teachers. And when you have, and was able to break it down and quantify stuff, breaking it down into how do you feel thermally? How do you feel acoustically? How do you feel the way the layout works in, I imagine, very, very first Lindsay, it was about how the layout of the classroom, how all that was going to affect learning. As Ken talks about, this is mushy stuff. It's hard to get at, but Lindsay was one of those people working at getting at it. And I think she's still working at it. And I think it's great. I think, yeah.
Well, I think you have to work out the economics, because even though the idea is great, you still got to put that into you got to sell it and monetize it. And I think that's where the issues are, is that even though we all agree that is a great way to do it and it's a great solution, now how do we pay for it? And I think that's where their challenges are coming, is how to get incentivized, how to be rewarded for making that investment. And that's through occupancy. That's through people staying in long-term real estate. So
yeah.
Right.
I hate to come and say, well, I want another swat at this, but I do want another swat at it.
Take another swat.
Ken's article, which is great. He's always a young gun because he's bringing up Alexa, the voice entry, the Google Assistant, how we're going to interface with our buildings differently. And my labeling article, which set that up for in February, is that all these things that seem to be rushing ahead so quickly, what the CCTV cameras do, the visualization analytics, the voice analytics, they're just frosting on the cake. Once you get the labeling, once you get the metadata, you can do that kind of, you can enable Alexa. You can eventually enable Comfy to get better and better. But you need that labeling.
Gotcha.
to get there. So I think
But
his mind is way out in the future in this area of how the buildings are going to be.
But I love the fact that you definitely defined in very precise terms what high touch is. It's the mushy stuff that's hard to define.
And the article, actually giving another pitch for my March article, which comes from DLR Group, big, recognized out of Chicago, but they're all over the place, MEP firm, is how they try to predict in the beginning performance of a building before an architect puts pen to paper, trying to get at that mushy stuff. The architects try to do that. And then at the back end, so they have a lot of input on the front end, thinking about comfort and how the user is actually going to use the space. There's a lot of thought that goes in, and they talk about that. But then at the back end of that build construct cycle is the phase of functional test. Is it doing what we're supposed to do? And where Lindsay was before, post occupancy surveying, which happens right after, when 6 months after the people are in the building. How is this working out? And that's too when a DLR Group has, and they're working with familiar brands we know in analytics to test that out at the end. And how is the control programming working out in terms of heating, lighting, and getting that back again to the feedback for the next project they're working on. So those decisions we made really early in the design process, how did those decisions work out? The MEP firms are trying to get that full cycle, but we're early days.
Sure. Well, I tell you, you've got a good future. That's why Eric once said that if you're a building owner, this is a great time to be in the business, because finally you're going to be able to get that predictability or forecasting how good your building is, so that you can measure metrically. If you invest this much money, this is what you're going to get. If you invest this much money, this is what you're going to get. And then they can opt how they fund their building, and then expect the performance, and then have the commissioning tools and the provisioning tools, and like you just said, the surveying, the function testing, to verify that things were done right, and then move forward. So I think we got an exciting industry. I think the innovation, everything we see coming at it, is only going to improve it, but it's going to disrupt people. So all the people that are in their sweet spots and they don't want to, like Ken St. Clair, they don't want to, it's either move or groove or get out of the way. So we got a really exciting future. So I'm looking forward to the next time we see Therese. Yeah,
absolutely. Therese, where are we going to see you next? What's your next conference?
Well, my next conference is certainly Santa Clara CABA Forum. And then I hope to get to Tampa and Haystack. And I hope to get to San Diego and IBCon.
Very, very cool. All right. Well, listen, Therese, we got to hop up, but thank you so much. We've been talking, and our guest this week has been Therese Sullivan from buildingcontext.me. Go check her blog out. She's one of the great thought leaders in our industry. So, Therese, thanks for taking some time to speak with us today.
Well, you're welcome. It's always great. It's always fun.